Hello and welcome. Today we would discuss Sukirtharani's poetry, and in particular we would be discussing Debt. This is a poem which is originally titled Maru in Tamil. So let me first talk about Sukirtharani as a poet. Sukirtharani is a Dalit poet writing in Tamil. She's known for writing about the marginalization of the Dalit community, and within that she talks about the extreme marginalization of the Dalit woman. She's born to a big family. She's the fifth child in a Tamil Dalit Christian family. She's won a lot of recognition. She's a voice to reckon with, and she's also a teacher in a government senior secondary school in Ranipet district in Tamil Nadu. And she is now an internationally recognized voice. Let me talk a little bit about her life and experiences, because these experiences which she talks about from her life actually also affect the way she does poetry, and her political views are obviously very important when we talk about the poetry that she does. So Sukirtharani is very open and frank about her experiences of growing up as a Dalit in Tamil Nadu. She describes many incidents from her own life and talks about the many ways in which the Dalit child would start facing bias very early. And she talks about a candy incident where maybe, as a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old, she was given a candy by a friend of hers, by a classmate of hers. But when she tried to return this favor, this friend did not accept that candy and resisted the initiative of friendship. And that's when she realized that people would resist becoming friends with her only because she was a Dalit. And eventually she's also talking about her other experiences of going to school but being segregated. And she says that most Dalit children were segregated, and therefore she went to school, but she was more or less she was friendless. And this is one of the very first instances of discrimination, which continues eventually also in later life. Her father was a laborer, but despite the fact that he had low income, he insisted that all his children should get an education. So these children, because they did not also come from a family with high means, so the children studied in government schools and depended upon government aid. And by government aid, I mean government books which are provided by the school itself, which she says, she would get books towards the very end of the annual session. There was this thirst in her to learn, but books were not available. And eventually, when things became better, she does become an avid reader. She talks about, reading poetry of other South Asian women and being inspired by them. And eventually, she also started expressing herself through poems. So in her poetry, she talks specifically about women and their side of the story. And, while Dalit experience would be talked about by many poets, many authors, many novelists, but her way of, describing the woman's experience has been found to be very important and refreshing at the same time. So the themes that she discusses in many of her poems is the theme of the body. She talks about marginalization. She also talks about land, nature. She talks about feminine experience. And within that, there is a very frank expression of desire, due to which, many had started considering her to be an obscene poet. Now, let me just talk a little bit about this expression of female desire. Many poets, feminist poets, have taken to discussion of the body. And here I would just give you an example of Rupi Kaur, who is also another feminist voice, and she also uses the body as the symbol, and she also talks about desire. And maybe because these women or these poets talk about the female body because the female body is very often supposed to be repressed, and you're not supposed to talk about it very frankly. So for Sukirtharani, that aspect is also there. I'm not saying that Rupi Kaur and Sukirtharani have the same style of poetry. They're very different styles of poetry, but I'm just saying that that the image of the body is common to their poetic styles, and the reason behind it, one of the reasons behind it is the repression. But for Sukirtharani, there's an added dimension, and for her, she says that the body is the symbol of further marginalization for the Dalit. Now, these aspects maybe would be more useful when you read her other poem, My Body, but I'm just talking about her style of poetry in general. Now, the poem that we are right now going to study is Det or Kaimaru. And Kaimaru is the original title. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Forgive me if I'm not. And it has been translated as Det, and it has also been given other titles by other translators. So this poem is actually about a Dalit woman manual scavenger, and a manual scavenger is basically a person who cleans human excreta, and she takes it away from homes and carries it to, say, a pit outside the village or outside the locality. And this for her is her everyday task of cleaning a pit toilet. I would discuss this whole idea of manual scavenging once the poem is over, but this image would be very helpful for us to understand the thing that she is actually describing. This is a woman who is cleaning a pit toilet in perhaps a semi-urban or a rural place in India or in South Asia. I mean, these are problems which have been not just only about India, but mostly other countries within South Asia. So let me start reading the poem. A piece of hide sewn to the base of the basket, she sets out. The blunt-edged scrap iron sheet, piled with gathered ashes, is heavy in her arms. A piece of hide. Hide is actually animal skin. So there is animal skin on the base of her basket, and she's carrying this basket around. And she has also another iron sheet in her arms. And she also has ashes on it. Now, she carries ashes mainly because, they would just help her to easily scrape the shit whenever she's going to clean it. So it just helps you collect the waste better. That's the reason she's carrying ashes. And with this equipment, the iron sheet and the basket, she's going to houses, and this is how she's cleaning, the excreta or the toilets within these houses. I'll read the next stanza. Behind a house that's fit to split into too many people in it, she stops there, her eyes falling on a square iron sheet swinging from a nail. Raising it with one hand, she throws a handful of ashes inside. Now, she has her iron sheet and her basket, and she goes to this house. And this house is occupied by many people who live there. And it is so crowded that the house would actually split. Now, the reason why the poet writes about so many people in the house is for us to imagine that all these people would have also used the toilet, and she has to take out all this shit from the bathroom where everyone would have defecated. So the more the people, the more work for her, and it's also supposed to evoke more disgust in the reader. And she starts cleaning when the ashes, as I told you, she throws off the ashes inside just to help her out to scrape it off, right? And then scraping her forearm into the hole's jagged edges, she sweeps and scoops from left to right, tilting it into the basket. And she starts cleaning this hole, and the hole, which I've mentioned, which here is mentioned, it would be this hole, and the iron sheet which is dangling from the nail would be, some people may just cover it with an iron sheet, and just to make it look less graphic to the passers-by, but these women or whoever has to clean the manual toilet will have to lift that iron sheet and clean this hole, right? And so this is the hole that she's actually cleaning. Okay, so she starts cleaning this place where everyone would have defecated, and she cleans up the dirt, scooping. We know what scooping is, right? When you have to pick up something, scooping out the shit from the hole with the help of the iron sheet and putting it into the basket, right? Sweeps and scoops, sweeps and scoops, and that's from left to right, left to right. So that's her way to clean it, right? Tilting it into the basket. And when it's full and heavy on her head, with the back of her hand, she wipes away yellow water streaming down her brow, and then with easy grace, she goes her way. Now, when this basket is full and the hole is now empty, she has to now carry this basket on her head. But this basket, because the kind of waste in the basket is semi-solid, it's leaking, and some of the water, this yellow water, is actually streaming onto her forehead, and she has to clean that with the back of her hand. Now, this is again to show the graphic nature of the kind of work that these women have to do. If we notice the picture that I've also shown, these women don't have the equipment to cover their heads or to cover their hands. So they're doing it with their bare hands and their uncovered heads, right? So, and this woman just, carries on the day, and she the poet just says that, and then with an easy grace, she goes her way. So she cleans this yellow water from her forehead with the back of her hand with an easy grace. And she does this, it's almost like a feminine gesture, the use of the back of your hand to clean off your forehead. It's a very feminine gesture. So, it's graceful in that, except that this would be, this water would be dirty and smelly, as we could imagine. And eventually this woman just walks away with all this burden of human waste on her head. And towards the end, the poet says, what I can do for her is not to defecate once. And the author says that, she asks us, what can we do to help this woman out, to unburden this woman, maybe if we just don't defecate for one day. And this is, towards the end, this is something, in the poem, when we read the poem, we are imagining what this woman is doing. It's only towards the end of the poem that it becomes clear that she is actually cleaning the human waste. And then you go back and then you read it again, because now it's only in the last line that you've understood this. This poem is very nicely constructed, because in the first read the reader would never get to know that this woman is actually what this woman is doing is actually manual scavenging. So this is to bring to the notice, towards the end, she says this is when she says that one thing that I can do to not defecate, this is to bring to the notice that it's human waste that this woman is carrying. And as I said that, it's only clear in the very end of the poem that, that what this woman was doing. So this is the poem. It's a very simply written poem, and to us it becomes clear only towards the end. So it's written in such a way that that the reader would not get to know what this poem is about. So, and that adds a layer of when you see a manual scavenger, you may not think about the actual task that they do, but it takes some time for you to think about it in more deeply and then develop empathy. And this is something that the poem also does. Like, you read it in one go, you won't understand what's going on, but once you do, you can't but have empathy for the woman who is written about. Now, similar issues it's not just in this poem, but similar issues have been discussed in other novels and in other, possibly in other poems, although I haven't come across. Please let me know if there are other similar poems. But Untouchable by Mulk Raj Anand does come to mind when we talk about the labor of a manual scavenger. Now, let me discuss, as I told you, let me discuss manual scavenging right now. The kind of manual scavenging that this poem is describing has officially been banned in India for several decades now. But still, there may be many remote areas. If you read newspaper reports, this practice is actually continuing, right? And even if you were to assume that slowly either this has been eradicated excuse me, or it will be eradicated soon, this whole experience of manual scavenging would still be in the Dalit psyche, right? So the community would still remember that if not them, their ancestors were doing this job, and that's the kind of discrimination, that is the kind of inequality that has existed. So this would, no matter how far you may go in the fight for equality, your memories would still be painful, right? So some of the Dalit poetry is also describing this pain of inequality, even if it does exist for people in the past, or for other people further marginalized within the community, right? So and for a reader, you need to understand that that talking about this practice itself is to bring some sensitization between castes. Okay, so the poet's idea is to remind you of the disgusting nature of the task itself. And even today in urban areas, in many cities, the task of cleaning drains by human beings, these human beings who go inside the drain, and unfortunately you may have heard of the fact that many drain cleaners have to lose their lives because it's a very risky business, right? It's a very risky task to inhale the very harmful toxic gases of the manhole. So this work is still relegated to the lowest castes, and you can read some cover stories about how while not all Dalits would be doing this, but all people who would be doing it would belong to the lowest of the low caste. So this kind of manual scavenging would still exist for many people within the caste even today, and it is an ongoing issue. Right now you don't see that ending too soon. So even if we may believe that the traditional kind of manual scavenging which has been described in this poem has been eradicated, new forms of scavenging, new forms of manual scavenging do exist, and it is as oppressive. Okay, so this poem does bring to the context a deep societal problem, and it also highlights that it's a woman's issue. A big thing that this poem does is that it's a woman's issue, and very often you would see that the people who are doing the work of carrying manual scavenging, who carrying human excreta on their heads in baskets, this is the work which is mostly left for women to do. So by describing the nitty-gritty of the actual task, we're also made to notice that it's the Dalit woman who's doing this work. So finally, through this poem, she's bringing a caste issue to the forefront, but we also know that this is a woman's issue that has been brought to the forefront. Thank you so much for asking for this poem. This poem has been, let me just remember the names of the students who asked for this poem. So this poem has been requested by Sahil and Mitlesh. Thank you, Sahil and Mitlesh, for requesting for this video. I hope you guys like it. Please let me know if you want me to do any other poems which you would want to understand more fully. Thank you for all your love, for all the appreciation. It really means a lot to us. And write to me if you would like to have any more clarification about this poem or about any other thing that has been uploaded by my channel. Thank you so much.